All right, how you doing, Greg? Today I'm going to introduce you to the newest technology from Keyence, the LRW. It kind of bridges some of the gaps that maybe we've had in this other LRZ PRG family of sensors. So in front of you, I've got the LRT, the LRW, the LRZ, and the PRG. So I've got distance-based technologies and then a couple contrast with a little contrast kind of plus technology in this particular sensor here. All these sensors have we've developed to be basically a family of sensors. They all are stainless steel or nickel, so they've all got a metal body. They're all at least IP67. We've got IP69K here. And they all have a live display and either a push button or a trim pot. So really easy to use, really kind of clever sensors and really unique in what each one brings to the table and the kinds of detection that each one has. So I'm going to kind of partially reintroduce you to both the LRZ, LRT, and PRG, but more importantly, I'm going to talk a lot about the LRW today. So the LRW is a full spectrum, white light appearance sensor. So this sensor is used for detecting changes in appearance, whether it be some black versus white, very simple style appearance, or two very similarly shaded colors, or two opposite colors, doesn't matter. This sensor can pick up on just about any of those. First, I'm going to touch on a couple little things, a couple different application examples that we have here in the literature. So obviously the registration mark is going to be huge for this. So the food and pack, again, we've got that IP67, so you can wash it down, metal body. Registration mark on food labels, on food packages, on rolls, on papers, doesn't matter, anything like that. So that's typically a pretty easy situation unless I've got a colored registration mark against a colored background. That can maybe be a little bit tricky, but again, this sensor is going to handle those kind of things. Color sorting with rounded targets or long range targets, part detections in molds, different things like that. This sensor has a 20-inch range. 500 millimeters, and it's also got an adjustable beam spot. So what that means is I can focus this beam spot all the way down to 18 millimeters at 500 millimeters. So what that's going to eliminate is any bleed over. A common issue with challenging long-range sorting applications is that the beam spot is going to grow so large, by that point, that I'm going to bleed out into the area of the target I'm not so interested in. So I can dial this down with this little trim pot right here on the top and bring it into a point of focus where those sorting applications become possible once again. I mentioned earlier, but this uses a white LED, which covers the full spectrum. Instead of a red LED like I've got on the PRG here, the white LED can get information back on the red, green, blue scale. So what that means is as I get into those really difficult color matching applications, this sensor can do that. But again, it'll also do the black and white. It'll do the the brown versus white, things like that. It'll also do those. I've got a couple different application examples here, and then a couple little more involved points of the literature there. But I'm just going to jump right into demoing this thing for you, show you the ease of use, show you the user friendliness, and give you an idea about how easy this thing is to set up. So the first application I'm going to show you, I'm going to just start off with something typically pretty tough for a contrast sensor. So what I've got here is a very dark midnight blue, basically, against a jet black background. That kind of application would be really tough for any kind of contrast sensor. You're going to see here, if I dial it up and I set the focus on this LRW, and what I want to do is set the focus such that I don't bleed out, like I was mentioning earlier, into the black. I want to be purely focused on that blue section of my target. Once I get that focus adjusted, all I'm going to do is I'm going to press and hold the set button on the top of the sensor for 3 seconds. 1, 2, 3. And you're going to see the output light turn on and then a matching value slowly flash on the screen for a couple of seconds. That would be my matching threshold, basically, on a percentage basis. So you can see I've got a solid output there on the blue. But if I move to the black, any section of the black, doesn't matter. My output light's going to turn on. And I go back over to the blue, it stays on. And that output light's going to stay on even if I adjust the target, if I stay on the target, importantly. But if I, adjust the, bend the target or anything like that, as long as I can find that target again, my output light is going to turn back on. So basically a simple application for this sensor, more challenging for a standard contrast sensor. What I've got now is two different shades of gray, two very similarly shaded portions of gray. What I want to do is differentiate between the two. So I'm going to use a different calibration technique here. I'm actually going to bring my beam spot out just a little bit larger. Again, set the focus on the top of the sensor. Little trim pot, pretty easy to do. And I'm going to do a 2-point set here. So instead of press and hold, I'm simply going to press, move to the second side, and press again. So set once, it's flashing set, waiting for its second command. I'm going to move it to the second shade of gray. Set again. And now I've got stable output here on the first, the desired target. If I scan over there, I don't get an output. Solid output there on the gray, nothing over there, and back over here to the gray. So again, another simple calibration technique, further driving home the simplicity that not only this sensor, but every sensor in this family has. So this is a really unique feature that I don't think any other color sensor in the world likely can do. What I'm going to do is I'm going to calibrate in this portion of this wood grain, and you can see this wood grain has all kinds of striations, different patterns, and different shades all throughout it because it is a natural wood grain. But you can also see I've got maybe a stained portion or a waxed portion, and then I've got a portion that is not waxed, a little bit lighter in color. So to calibrate for this half of the demo card and allow for those striations, all I'm going to do is I'm going to press and hold the set button while I scan through the material until the sensor flashes up set again and tells me that I'm done. So if I just press and hold set, scan through the desired area, it's going to flash and say, okay, I've got it. So now anywhere on this darker colored of the wood grain, doesn't matter what particular pattern I'm getting, I've got that solid output, no flickering, nothing like that. But the second I switch over to that lighter pattern, didn't get stained or didn't get waxed, my output turns on, doesn't matter where I am. Once again, output light turns off. So you can see that kind of calibration or that kind of differentiation would be really hard for any existing contrast sensor, but for something like the LRW, super easy to do and super easy to calibrate for. So one last thing I want to note is I've showed you these kind of really difficult applications, but I also want to show that the LRW can do those black versus white applications. So all I'm going to do is just a simple 1-point set, press and hold, 3 seconds. It's going to flash, output light's going to turn on. The second I go to that white, obviously my output light's going to turn off. Very easy application, black versus white. You could have likely used the PRG for something like that, but here I'm going to show you the LRW. So it not only will do those really difficult applications, color sorting, wood grain, things like that, but it'll also do those existing simple registration, black on white style of applications. So I've got another demo card here, another demo unit that I'm going to touch on a couple of these other sensors briefly, but again delve really deep into the LRW. So the first thing is I've got a black versus a black at some distance change. So even the LRW would have an issue with this kind of target, but something like the LRZ. So this is our distance-based laser sensor. I know you're familiar with it, but I'm gonna show it real quick just to kind of refresh you about how this technology works. Again, this is everything out to 10 inches we can detect here, as long as we've got some physical change in space. So what this sensor is really great for is ignoring those color changes, or ignoring those surface changes, finishes, things of that nature that the LRW thrives on. This sensor ignores that and is simply looking for positional change. It's going to send out a pulse of light, a laser light, and that's going to hit my target. It gets bounced back, organized somewhere against this little lens, and displayed against a CMOS chip inside the head. What that's going to do is it's going to give me a distance, a relative distance calculation versus the other set points. So once I've got this known distance, the sensor is able to pick up on distance changes. And again, super easy to use, just like the LRW. All I'm going to do is here's a little 2-point set. So I'm going to press set one time on my lower target, press set again. You'll see my output light turns on, output light turns off. Really stable, doesn't matter. The LRZ is really great for doing applications like this, where I don't have a color change, or if I want to ignore a color change, the LRZ will do something like that. Just to kind of refresh you about the technology that's in the LRZ. But now I'm going to step back into that LRW. So I've got what would historically be a pretty challenging application here for just about any sensor on the market. So I've got a dark red against a very highly metallic, looks like brushed stainless target. So, and if I want to train for that red, first again I'm going to set my focus. So bring that beam spot into focus, again eliminating any bleed over. So I want to make sure I fill that red stripe, but I don't bleed over into the stainless. So once I get that set point adjusted or the focus adjusted, all I'm going to do is I'm going to press and hold set for 3 seconds. Setting value is going to flash on the screen, output light is going to turn on, and again I'm going to get stable detection, ignore any of the stainless, positive output on the red. Super easy to calibrate, doesn't matter. One other application, so you can see I've got two really very similar shades of fabric here. I'm going to call this one brown and maybe this more of a slightly green, and then I've got blue over here. So differentiating between those two would be really tough for a contrast sensor. But if I had the LRW here, it once again becomes pretty easy. And I'm going to demo kind of the range that this sensor has here as well. So I'm going to bring this thing up and again set the focus. And you'll see that beam spot even at, I don't know, maybe something like 16 or 18 inches here. I've got really good focus on the beam spot, nice solid beam spot. So if I want to differentiate between those two different patterns or two different fabrics, I'm going to use a 2-point set here. So I'm going to press set one time on my desired target, move it over to the other one, press set again. So now once I move over here to the pattern that I originally trained the sensor for, I get a solid output, really stable, 999. I scan back over here, my output light turns off. No noise, no chatter, once again, solid output. Now, for example, if I'm going to call this a conveyor, and I wanted to train this into the sensor, and let's say that's a seam on a conveyor belt or something like that, and I say I don't want to output on that, but I do want to output on this blue. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to train that color in. So obviously I've got detection here. I don't have it here. So I'm going to train that in. All I'm going to do is press and hold the set button with the mode button for 3 seconds. Add popped on the screen. Now you can see my output light is turned on there, stays on here, and if I switch to blue, then I obviously lose it. So super easy way to add in that kind of greenish fabric while maintaining my output on that more brown fabric. One last unique application here is going to be this little green spot, this little green dot on the demo card. So I've got a couple bolt heads here, and if I'm going to allow this green to, I'm going to call that a reject bolt. It's a bad bolt, for example. I'm going to change the range of this thing just to demo the versatility on you. But again, adjust the set point, or excuse me, the focus. Make sure that I'm in focus and I'm not bleeding out of that green. Press and hold the set button for 3 seconds on the green target. My setting value flashes, my output light turns on, stable detection. I switch over here, no detection, even on this really highly reflective target surface. But even if I switch to the green, I get that nice, solid, stable output. Super easy to use, super easy to calibrate. That's the point with all these sensors that you have in front of you. So once again, just to kind of refresh your memory, the LRT, kind of the big brother to the LRZ, that's my long-range 2 or 5 meter distance-based technology. So again, ignoring color changes, ignoring surface changes, ignoring other elements that might cause you some issue. But again, all the way up to 5 meters, where I've got 10 inches of detection here, distance-based technology. The PRG being a simple contrast sensor with that known set value of 100, super easy to calibrate, simple trim pot, all self-contained. And finally, that appearance detection sensor, the LRW. Metal body, just like the other 3 sensors you have in front of you. but really good at not only black versus white, brown versus white, simple contrast applications, but also really good for that gray, or excuse me, brown versus a dark, a hunter green, or red against a highly metallic surface, green on a highly metallic surface. Or one of, I think, the most powerful demos here is that midnight blue, excuse me, against black. So that's the LRW, and that's the family of LRZ, PRG, our self-contained stainless steel sensors. If you have any questions, have any applications, I'd be happy to look at them and hopefully solve it for you with one of these 4 sensors sitting in front of you.